Okay, good morning. My name is Lori Chesnut, and I would like to welcome you today to the first webinar in a series of webinars that will be hosted by the Oklahoma Transition Council. I'm proud to be a member of the Oklahoma Transition Council. I just want to say thank you for joining us today. So the plan for today is to go over a secondary transition plan in OK EdPlan. We have about 45 minutes to go over the slides and the sample transition plan. We will save the last 15 minutes for questions. So again, my name is Lori Chesnut, and I am the Secondary Transition Specialist for the Oklahoma State Department of Education. So today we're going to take a look at a sample student. If you haven't ever been on the National Technical Assistance Center on Transitions website, I highly recommend it. We are going to look at Jody today. Jody's a sample student from Intact, and just what I have done is taken the information from Intact and fit those components of the transition plan into OK EdPlan. You'll be able to click on the link at a later time and view Jody's full sample. Okay, so again, in OK EdPlan, the IEP team will develop the transition service plan by clicking on this button. Due to time constraints, we are only going to be looking at the transition service plan tab for today. If you have additional questions about, how to use OK EdPlan in general, you can contact me and I can help you out with that at a later time. So according to Oklahoma State policy, the IEP must include secondary transition services that are in effect no later than the beginning of the student's 9th grade year or upon turning 16 years of age, whichever comes first. Or, of course, as an IEP team, the team can always decide to develop the transition plan at an earlier date. The plan must be updated annually. So what this means is that the team will develop the first transition plan at least during the 9th grade year. So you will click on the assessment button.
Yeah, I got it. Okay.
Those of you that are not muted, if you could please at this time mute yourself. We're hearing a little bit of background noise. So if you could mute yourself, we would really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Okay, and let's see.
Okay, so the first thing that you will do is select the assessment from a drop down, or you can always select custom assessment. You will select the component area and score type.
Oh, did you? Oh, yeah.
I don't know about you guys, but I was in the classroom teaching when
well, and I'm glad too, because there was a lot.
A lot of, I guess, this section because I wasn't really sure. It felt like my assessments weren't matching up with the components area and score type. So I do just want to remind you that, you can always select custom assessment and you can always choose performance, and that will just give you a text box. So the Brigance employability skill inventory evaluates that individuals need when seeking employment in the areas of reading, writing, speaking, listening, comprehending, and computing skills. So it's just one example of a transition assessment. So what you will do is list the results of the transition assessment in the assessment narrative. This is the really important box. This is where you can really paint a picture of the student's needs and strengths. So this is the most important thing. Don't get, too bogged down in the component and the performance areas, but really give an overall description of the summary of the assessment in this box. Keep in mind that the needs from the assessments become the annual transition goals. So Jody completed the Brigance employability skills inventory. And the test reported that she was functioning at 3rd grade level in reading, 4th grade level in math, and she has adequate verbal skills.
Okay, I guess
I was just trying to coach that one.
so I'm gonna get her to and then you guys have her from there?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. The next assessment for Jody is the self-directed search Form E. This asks simple questions about individuals' likes and dislikes, their competencies, their job interests, and their personal abilities. We're going to pause just for a moment. We're still experiencing a lot of feedback. So our Jen Randall is here with.
If she needs a
Or
place
is she
to
okay to
be.
be in class right now, as long as we know where she is?
Well, yeah, I mean, it might be better.
Okay, I think we're good now. Okay, everyone has been muted. Please do not unmute yourself. Again, we're experiencing a lot of background noise. Thank you so much. Okay, so back to the self-directed search Form E. This asks simple questions about individuals' likes and dislikes, their competencies, their job interest, and their personal abilities. It provides a 2-letter summary code based on Holland Siri. And this can be used to find jobs with matching or similar codes. So for Jody, she completed the self-directed search Form E, and the results indicate that she prefers social careers where she can be around people. She can be described as cooperative, friendly, helpful, and social. The results of the self-directed search indicate Jody's desire to work in retail will be good fit for her. And again, this is just what it looks like on the printed copy in OK EdPlan.
Let's go in class.
Okay, the next assessment is the Parents and Teenager Survival Checklist. Yeah, we're still having trouble with people somehow becoming unmuted. Please mute yourself if you're not already muted. Thank you so much. All right, so the Parents a Teenager Survival Checklist. This is just an informal assessment, and students are just rated on their ability to perform tasks in several areas. Things like preparing cooked meals, comparison shopping, geography, maintenance, you know, lots of different things. And the way the scale works is that they're rated when no, they're not able to do these things, or some, they may be able to do it some of the time, or usually, or always. So again, that assessment narrative is really where you want to give an overall description of the results of the summary. I can hear. Okay, are you guys able to hear me? We were getting some reports in the chat box that we were having trouble with sound. Yeah. Oh, okay. Okay. You know, for the first webinar, we're bound to have some technical difficulties. So thank you guys for being patient. Okay, it looks like we're back on. I'm not sure what happened there with the sound, but we're back on track. So we were talking about the Parents of Teenagers Survival Checklist. I'm not able to go with my Okay, sorry, I lost my ability to change slides. Hold on just a second. So for Jody, Jody is not able to navigate to most areas of her city independently. She's not able to name surrounding towns or cities or use a road map. She is always able to name the country that she lives in. She is sometimes able to ask for help getting directions and read road signs. She is not able to use the public transit system without assistance, which for Jody, this is an issue because she's not going to be getting a driver's license, and she will need to learn to use the public transit system in order to access her community and get to her job and place where she wants to continue her education. Okay, I'm not sure what's going on, Jen, but I am not able to change to the next slide. So if you can help me out with that, that'd be great. Okay, looks like we're back. We're good now. Perfect. Okay, so the next section of OK EdPlan, this is really important. There's a lot of important information that goes in this box. So here you will list the transition needs from the assessments, preferences, strengths, interest, and course of study, again, based on transition assessments. The course of study should focus on instructional and educational classes and experiences that will assist the student in preparing for transition from school to post-secondary life, including post-secondary education, vocational education, integrated employment, could include supported employment, adult services, independent living, or community participation. The course of study should relate directly to the student's post-secondary goals and should show how a planned course of study is linked to these goals. So to help you keep track to make sure that you've included all of the information, you can list out needs, preferences, strengths, and course of study just to make sure it's all in there. So back to Jody. Jody has needs in the areas of functional math and reading. She wants to work in retail, but she's not sure what job. Jody has needs in money management, and she's not able to navigate her community alone. She does prefer to work with people, and she's very social. She likes making money, and she likes looking at magazines and store ads. She can identify bills and coins, make change and pay for items, and has a good work ethic. She has strong verbal communication skills and is perceptive about the moods of others. She demonstrates independence in caring for her food and hygiene skills. Interested in a job at a retail store where she can be around people. Her course of study includes English, reading, geometry, history, life skills, computers, and work study. Okay. Students entering the 9th grade are automatically enrolled in the college preparatory work-ready curriculum. ACE has, our legislation has changed, and so I know you still see the word ACE in OK EdPlan, but ACE is really no longer, it's college preparatory and work-ready. To participate in the core curriculum, the parent or legal guardian must complete an opt-out form, and then that form must be kept in the curriculum option marked must match the student's educational records in their cumulative folder. All right, so now we're getting to the fun stuff. Post-secondary goals. These are the goals that occur after high school, okay? If you think about the prefix post, it means after. They answer the questions, where do I want to learn after high school? Where do I want to work after high school? Where do I want to live? How will I participate in my community after high school? Post-secondary goals must be updated annually. So they may change as students' interests changed, especially around in the middle school grades. Hopefully by the closer the student is to graduating, junior and senior year, hopefully those post-secondary goals are staying more stable, but they do need to be, updated annually. It's important to make sure that students are involved in the development of their goals and in their IEP. Best practice would be that students are leading their IEP. That's why the goals are written in first person in OK EdPlan, just to remind us the importance that this whole entire plan is about the student and what they want to do after high school. Education and training and employment is required for all students. Independent living and community participation is required for students that are participating in the OAP. It is also appropriate to address independent living and community participation when results from assessments indicate students' needs in these areas. And what we talk about a lot with OTC is, how many of us needed help in independent living and community participation. We certainly didn't have all the skills or know everything we needed to know when we, when we left our parents' home or started going to college. So it's best practice to make sure you're assessing students in all of those areas and then addressing goals for those areas. Jody's post-secondary goals include, upon graduation from high school, I will attend Career Tech and participate in the entrepreneurship program. For employment, upon graduation from high school, I will work part-time at a local retail store. Independent living, upon graduation from high school, I will live with my mom and manage my own money. Community participation, upon graduation from high school, I will travel to and from work in Career Tech on the city bus. Okay, next are the annual goals. And I'm not sure how you guys feel about the annual goals, but when I was teaching, these are the goals that I struggled most with when I started writing transition plans and working with students at middle school and high school level. So the annual goals are based on the transition needs that were identified using transition assessments. Annual goals address what skills the student will learn this year to show movement towards attaining their post-secondary goals. And one thing that's important to keep in mind is that for students that are assessed by alternate achievement standards, the team needs to include short-term objectives and benchmarks. Jody's annual transition goals include, for education and training, with daily direct instruction and use of high-interest reading materials such as newspaper, teen magazines, young adult women's magazines, school-approved websites, and short stories for adults, I will increase my reading comprehension scores by 1 grade level by the next IEP. So Jody wants to attend the Career Tech and study that entrepreneurship program. That's her plan. But her reading skills are not where they need to be for her to be able to attend the Career Tech. So that is why the team has decided to choose reading comprehension as an annual transition goal. So sometimes you'll see a connection between the academics and the transition annual goals. For employment, I will identify my likes and dislikes of retail employment options by completing a job site interest survey and verbally describing my preferences by the end of the semester. Independent living, given explicit instruction on saving money and balancing a checkbook, I will demonstrate how to write a check and use a debit card, make checking account deposits and withdrawals, manage and balance a checkbook in 4 out of 6 opportunities by the next IEP. For community participation, given direct instruction and guided practice, I will identify which public bus route I need to take in order to get from my house to the grocery store, retail store, which might be like a Target or a Walmart, and the Career Tech Center 4 out of 4 opportunities by the next IEP. So hopefully you're seeing a connection between what her post-secondary goals were, what she wants to do after high school, what the assessment showed, where her skills might be lacking, what she needs to really focus on during this IEP year to help her get closer to be able to achieve her post-secondary goals. Okay, the next section, and I'm going to be honest, this isn't my favorite section. You can't really, the box isn't big enough in the transition service coordinated activities. It does print and you have more room than it looks like you do, but I mean, you can see even in this example where it's kind of jammed in there. But transition services and coordinated activities are those skills, okay? So like we have our annual goals, and those coordinated activities are those smaller steps to help us achieve our annual goals. So secondary transition services, according to IDEA, are defined as coordinated set of activities for a student with a disability that is designed within a results-oriented process, focused on improving the academic and functional achievement of the student to facilitate the student's movement from secondary school to post-school activities. So those coordinated set of activities may include instruction, related services, community experiences, development of employment and other post-school adult living objectives, acquisition of daily living skills, and a functional vocational evaluation. So these activities, again, are based on the individual student's needs. They're like those mini steps to help the students achieve their annual goals. So for Jody, her coordinated activities for education, remember her goal was improving her reading comprehension level. So her coordinated activities are she's going to have some extra instruction in reading. She's going to work on reading ads in the newspaper and online. She's responsible for that, the special ed teacher and the parent. For employment, she's going to participate in work study and try out at least 3 different retail jobs. So Jody, the job coach, and the VR counselor will help out with that. Independent living, she's going to open a checking account, develop a budget, write checks, and use a debit card. So she's going to get some, real life practice getting better with managing her money. Community participation, she's going to get instruction and then practice using the public transportation, so the city bus. Okay, the next section is where you would list any accommodations that are necessary for transition services and coordinated activities. Jody's transition accommodations include text-to-speech, audiobooks, repeat instructions and ask Jody to restate to demonstrate understanding, a calculator for the banking activities, and a visual schedule for bus routes. Okay, the IEP team must document the projected date of graduation. And I really want to stress how important this is. We get many calls on, we know according to IDEA that some students are going to be continuing their education past the traditional 4 years, and that is an IEP team decision. That's why, that course of study and the planning becomes so important, and that's being discussed year after year. This is where, if you, as you are keeping track of the students, how many credits they're receiving and how they're progressing on their goals, their transition goals and their academic goals, this is where, you really want to, if you're anticipating that the student will not be graduating in the traditional 4 years, you would be documenting that. We get calls, things like the student's graduating, and then the parent has changed their mind and wanted that to continue, but all along it might have shown, that the graduation date was going to be the traditional 4 years. Or there's the other side, where it shows that the graduation date is in the future. Maybe they need 1 or 2 more years, but then, something happens and the school might decide that they're going to graduate. So I just want to emphasize the importance of this, and really, communication during the IEP team, having those conversations about course of study and the projected date of graduation. In Oklahoma, we only have a regular high school diploma. So that's the one that you should always be selecting. We do not have an other. In some other states, they do have alternate routes, alternate diplomas, but in Oklahoma, we do not. Make sure you're always selecting standard diploma. And the GED is something that's outside of public education. So Jody's projected date of graduation is May 20th, 2020. I like 20s. 20 is my favorite number. Okay, vocational rehabilitation. So it's really important that, IEP teams are informing parents and students about the various vocational education opportunities that might be available. We know that these vary depending on if you're, where you live. If you are in an urban or a rural or just different parts of Oklahoma, there are, very a vast majority of programs available depending on the career tech that might be located nearby. But whatever is available in your district, make sure that you are familiar with all of the different programs and that you are sharing that information with your parents and students. It might be things like programs at the local Career Technology Center, maybe, some possible courses that are happening at your school sites, high school vocational education courses, work study programs, school-based training, internships, any other vocational opportunities that may exist. The goal of the Department of Rehabilitation Services, DRS, sometimes called vocational rehabilitation, so voc rehab, the goal is to assist individuals with disabilities in becoming competitively employed. And they offer a variety of services. As a special education teacher, you must refer your students to DRS around the age of 15 and a half. Okay, so all students need to be referred to DRS at 15 and a half. That does require parent consent. The referral is just the first step. Parents must complete an application, and then the VR counselor will determine if the student is eligible for services. So it's important that you work closely with your VR counselor at your high school to ensure that students and parents are informed about DRS. Different counselors may have, a little bit of different way that they want to. Some counselors come to the school and collect those referral forms. Some have them, you mail them. So just work with your counselor and work, make sure that you are communicating closely, collaborate with them. I know Renee Sampson, the transition coordinator with DRS, we work very closely together. We collaborate on a variety of things, on a weekly basis, sometimes daily basis. So just make sure that you guys are working that all out, because DRS does provide wonderful services. We want to make sure our students are aware and that our parents are aware of the opportunities that may exist. Okay, so Jody and her mom have been informed of the various vocational educational opportunities available, and she was referred to DRS previously. That will just be documented. Okay, I mentioned that consent for release of confidential information is required before you just send out, before that referral is sent in. This is where you can access the consent for release of information. So on the document tab, it can also be created by clicking on the create final consent for release of confidential information that's located at the bottom of the transition service plan. So there's two places to access it in OK EdPlan. All right, so this is just what it looks like. I wasn't able to get the entire form just due to the constraints, but this is what it looks like up of it. Consent for release of confidential information. So you're going to fill it out, have the parent sign it, or a student if 18, but most of the time it should be the parent because you should be doing it around 15 and a half, but sometimes we know you get students that may move in that were never referred, possibly from out of state or something like that. So student if they're over 18, unless parents have guardianship, parent if they're under 18. And then after you have it, you fill it out and parent signs it, please upload that into OK EdPlan. And if this is where you would access that, if you've not uploaded your documents into OK EdPlan, that's what it looks like. So you would click on the documents and then go to the bottom where it says upload external documents. In order to upload external documents, you will need to save them to your computer. And then in OK EdPlan, click on the Documents tab, click on Upload External Documents tab. Then you would choose the file and select the file from your computer, wherever you saved it. I usually just save it on my desktop. Otherwise, I'm clicking around in folders and can't find anything, but wherever you save it. Then you're going to click on Upload the File tab. And then it will be in there. So, in the case that we come out to monitor or we, need to check it, we can see that it has, it's just documentation. And also if the student moves, we know we have students sometimes that move frequently. And that way the new teacher can see, yes, for sure, they were referred. Here, here it is, and you have that documentation. Okay, the VOC Rehab Referral Letter can be accessed from the Documents tab, or it can be created from, or printed, sorry, it can be printed from the Create Draft button. So you're going to, again, fill it out, sign it, and then upload it into OK EdPlan. And we mentioned earlier about that consent for release of confidential information. And just as a reminder, there's that box right on the referral letter that reminds the team to make sure they're getting consent for release of confidential information before sending in those referrals. All right, so we want to make sure that we are inviting members of outside agencies that may be paying for providing secondary transition services. We want to make sure we're inviting them to attend the IEP meetings. They may not be able to come to every meeting because of caseloads and schedules, but we want to make sure we're inviting them with plenty of time. And if they cannot attend, hopefully they can give some input prior to the meeting. So we want to make sure we're getting parent consent before we invite those outside members, and that can be accessed from the Documents tab. And then that's what it looks like. You'll click on that and then fill that out. You also want to make sure that you upload that signed parent consent for documentation. Okay, this next section was added last year. Those of you that have been teaching for a while, you probably remember C's and how we had that Indicator 13 checklist. And Indicator 13 is just, it's the percent of youth with IEPs that include appropriate measurable post-secondary goals, you know, making sure they're updated annually, they're based on age-appropriate transition assessments, there are transition services included, courses of study included, all of those things that are required under IDEA for secondary transition. So in our office, Eric Friend is our data person, or one of our data people, and to just the way data is pulled from EdPlan, the documents, the way it's pulled, it's kind of cumbersome. So in order to, you know, to strengthen this and make it easier for us to pull data, those questions were added. So the components for Indicator 13 are built into OK EdPlan as rules of completion. But again, these questions were added to just make it easier for us to pull data. We've had a lot of questions about questions 2 and 3 because for some reason there's not an NA button. So I just want to assure all of you that if an IEP team marks yes on the second question, so the question, were members of outside agencies paying for or providing secondary transition services invited to IEP meetings if appropriate? So if you mark yes on this question, you must mark yes on the third question. So if you invited them, you must mark yes, parent consent was obtained, and then make sure you have that documentation to show that parent consent was obtained. So we've had some questions, you know, people are hesitant to mark no on the third question because, you know, they're saying, oh, parent consent. But it really, I just want to assure you that the only way you would not be in compliance is if you marked yes on the second question and then you turned around and marked no on the third question. That would not be in compliance. I just want to clarify that because we have had a lot of questions. Okay, so back to Jody. She was actively involved in her IEP meeting. Her counselor was able to attend. I know it's a miracle. It's a dream. It's a dream transition plan. Thank you, Intact. But her counselor was able to attend and had parent consent to do that. Okay, transfer of rights, age of majority. So by age 17, students and parents must be informed about the age of majority and the transfer of the parent's rights to the student upon the student turning 18 years of age. When the student reaches the age of majority, which in Oklahoma is 18, the notification of meeting will be addressed to the student and a copy will be provided to the parent. The local educational agency must inform the parent of their option to seek legal advice if they plan to continue making all or part of the decisions for their student upon the student reaching the age of majority. For those of you that work with students with more significant support needs, I know it says by age 17, but you know, we know that this can be a long, lengthy process of getting guardianship and it can be expensive. So really those conversations need to start way before the age, you know, of by age 17. So make sure you are starting those conversations early. Okay, Jody and her mom have been informed that parental rights will transfer to Jody when she turns 18. All right, Jody, our sample student, is not a senior, but I do want to go ahead and mention that when a student exits from special education as a result of earning a regular high school diploma or aging out, the LEA must provide the student with a summary of his or her academic achievement and performance. So things like recent evaluation data, grades, progress made towards post-secondary goals, recommendations to assist the student in meeting post-secondary goals, things like the activities, accommodations, assistive technology, and strategies. Really want to, I know today we did not have time to go over the entire IEP, but I do want to take this opportunity to mention the importance of assistive technology, making sure that IEP teams are considering assistive technology. Those of you that have any experience with, working with students after high school, attending career tech or attending college, I don't know the stats right off the top of my head, but the majority of them are utilizing some type of assistive technology in order to help them achieve their post-secondary goals. So that's really, really important. And we work closely with our partners, AbleTech, to help out with that assistive technology. So if you have not, if you're not familiar with AbleTech, there's a link at the end of this. So they have wonderful resources on their website. They have trainings throughout the year. So get in touch with AbleTech if you need more support to help your students with assistive technology needs. Okay, so hopefully the student has had the opportunity to be an active participant in the development of the Summary of Performance, or the SOP, which is sometimes called. The document should contain the most updated information on the performance of the student and include both the student's abilities and aspirations. And again, just make sure that you are uploading that completed Summary of Performance into OK EdPlan. All right. Well, believe it or not, we are right on track with our time. So in just a few minutes, we will open this up to questions. Awesome. All right. So this just shows if you need to contact me or if you have any other questions regarding OK EdPlan or any policy questions, there is the contact information for the Oklahoma State Department of Education, Special Education Services, and our website. And then there's my contact information. You can email me or give me a call if you have any questions. On our website, we do have some technical assistance documents. One is our special education policies, and then our special education handbook, and then the special education process guide. The process guide really kind of walks you through step by step on how to write an IEP in EdPlan. So if you're not familiar with that, you might want to take a look at those documents. We also have on our website a section for secondary transition. So we have several resources for students and parents and teachers. One of those resources includes the Oklahoma Transition Handbook. Now, I believe it was last updated, I think in 2014, so OTC, that's probably something that we may be considering, doing some updating here in the next year or so. I'll talk to the team members, but it's been on my mind to do. But it still contains a lot of useful information. Of course, as you're well aware, IDA requirements have not changed since 2004, so it's still a relevant document. So check that out. All right, so at this time, we are going to open it up for questions, and we have, Jen has given me a list of some of the questions from the text box, so we'll start with those. So the first question is, what if your JH, junior high, I'm guessing?
I think so.
Doesn't have a job coach, what are other options? So, unfortunately, not all schools have contracts with DRS, and that's just where you have to get really creative as a district and a school in making sure that your students have transition service options available to them. One thing that I recommend is just looking at, making sure that you're familiar with the courses, the electives that are available at your school, and what transition skills might be being taught in those courses that you may not realize that students may be being exposed to, and just making sure you're documenting those on the IEP, and making sure that students are enrolling in those elective classes that support what they think they want to do after high school. Again, their interests may change, and maybe they think they want to do one thing and then they take a class in it or get exposure to it and they change their mind, and that's fine. But you just kind of have to think outside the box. The OU Zarrow Center has some wonderful resources in this area. I don't know how many of you are from rural communities that are joining in us today, but sometimes you just have to take advantage of the resources that are in your community. Like Andrea, one of the doc students at OU, she did a webinar a few weeks ago on, with riding horses and therapeutic horse riding. And what I really liked about that is it's not only the, position skills of taking care of the horses and all of that, but what might exist at that ranch where students might be able to get some additional skills. So just thinking of, when we can, if you want to include your email, we can send you some other options there. Okay. Number 2, what if our VR counselor never comes to meetings when invited? So, VR counselors, just like special education teachers, I know their caseloads are huge and they're not always able to come. I would just, still encourage you to meet, maybe email ahead of time once you get that parent consent for you guys to share information back and forth about the student. Just keep in communication. Talk to your VR counselor if this seems to be, happening on a regular basis. Maybe your VR counselor could come and talk to your students as a group, and that might be an option. So yeah, just keep on working with collaborating with them, and make sure that they know, of the meetings ahead of time, not like a day before, but a couple of weeks before, if possible. Number 3, is there a compiled list of who is at each district in the whole state? I think this question is referring to the VR counselors, if there's a list. What I do is go to the DRS if I don't know the counselor, because I will say that I know, talking to Renee, they have some openings in some different areas. So if you're living in one of the areas where they're currently seeking VR counselors, there may not be a person there's. So I would you can go to the DRS website and type in the name of your high school, and it will give you a list of the closest offices, and you could call that and then try to find out who is, because there's somebody responsible. Even if they have an opening, there's somebody that's carrying that caseload at the top while they're looking for someone else. Okay, number 4. How would I do DRS in the online setting? I'm an online teacher and kids are placed all over the state. That's a really good question, and I will talk to Renee Sampson, again, the transition coordinator for DRS. So if you would, whoever asked that question, if you would make sure that your email is included in the text box, I will check on that one and get back with you. Just still make sure that, that they're completing the referral, and encourage your parents to complete the application. Okay, number 5. If we do not get parent consent, what do we do then about the referral? So again, just making sure that your parents understand what. Time to change classes. Okay. I know sometimes even, the best intentions, you may have explained everything, they may be familiar with the services, but they're just hesitant to sign consent, and that's okay if that's their choice. Just make sure that you document that, and just, when you say no and that text box opens, just state that parents, are refusing to give consent. and then just, keep making sure that they know about it. And then when the student turns 18, if they want to, fill out the application, then they can do that. Number 6, if a student moves in from another Oklahoma district and has been referred to VR, do we need to complete another referral to our district's VR counselor? So yes, it would. If it wasn't in Oklahoma, it would go ahead and do that to make sure it's on the Oklahoma, that they've been referred to the Oklahoma DRS. All right. Is there a document available that can be used for informing the parent and the student about transfer of rights to the student at age 17? I have actually looked for this. There's, in the transition handbook that I showed you, there's a statement about it, but it's really just a statement that all of the rights and so when you give the parents their rights, when you're explaining that, I would just use those parental rights and tell them these are the things that will be transferring. Now, in the Oklahoma Transition Handbook, there is kind of a chart that kind of it breaks it down. So you might take a look at that and see if that might be helpful to you. I can't think of what page it's on off the top of my head, but it's in that Transition Handbook. Next question. When we inform parents that the transfer of rights has to be done before they are of age, if they need to get guardianship, they will ask, how do I do that? I don't know what to tell them. Okay, at the end of, and I apologize for skipping through these quickly, but I do want to show you, we have included some additional resources at the end of the slide, and one of the things is some guardianship resources. So the Oklahoma County Court Clerk has a guardianship handbook that you can let your parents know about. Even if you don't live in Oklahoma County, there's still useful information. Also, the Oklahoma Department of Human Services has a guardianship assistance program that's available for only a select individuals, but that has some information. And then there's also the Special Needs Alliance that might be some useful information. So I would start there. If you have additional questions, you can always contact me and I can provide some additional resources. Okay, the next question is, how close to graduation should the summary of performance be included? We don't have an Oklahoma policy that answers this. I know in the past, I believe that the guidance that the Zarrow Center, I think, that was giving was around 30 days prior to graduation. But I would just say that I know that depending on your school schedule and grades and all of that, I'm going to leave that up to district decision. So I would just have you talk to your special education directors. And the most important thing is that it is done. And I would encourage you to kind of have it like an ongoing document throughout the year, and the student is working on it and is involved in that process. And then it's just, it's finalized around graduation. But we don't want it to just be all on the teacher and that you're having to write it the last week of school. I would be working on it ongoing throughout the year, getting the students' input. Okay, what if in the situation where there is a temporary guardianship in place and that changes back to the parent? Does that change the parental consent? So, whoever had guardianship at the time of their referral, I mean, you're covered as long as it matched. So this is a new question to me. But I have never, I mean, I would say it's not necessary to go back and then get it if because you already got consent. Now, if the parent has not filled out the application, you could visit with, so let's say there was a temporary guardianship, now the student's back with biological parent, and let's say the application never happened. So you could have that, that conversation and encourage them to fill out the application. So that's kind of what I would do with that. But you wouldn't necessarily have to go back and do it again, because when you sent the referral in, you had followed the proper channels. So. Okay, what if the parent never fills out the VR application? Do we still have to invite the VR counselor? So again, it's our job to refer. The parent has to be the one to fill out the application. I know there are some districts that kind of go above and beyond and help the parents fill it out. It is lengthy. Work with your VR counselors to see what you want to do with that. So according to IDEA, you are required to invite those outside agencies that may be providing services or paying for services. So you can still, again, if you think that it might be an option, depending on what the student's post-secondary goals are, you can still invite them as long as you have parent consent to do that. Because maybe the parent's still not clear on what the services might be, and by inviting the DRS counselor, VR counselor, that might make a difference. And then after they might say, oh, okay, I get it now. And then they might go forward with the application. Okay. The next question is, do you have an example for an SOP? I do not. This has been on my list of things to do. I will tell you that there has been, in the past, OSDE was a little bit hesitant to give examples on different things, because unfortunately what happens is some people start using that and then you just see that same thing over and over and over. So I had to really, I had to get permission from, my executive director to do these webinars with you guys and to give more examples, because I think that's important. I think you need examples. You need good examples, because if you're new to transition or you're new to special education, if you don't have a good example, you may do it wrong just because you don't know any better. So that's something that we can take to the Oklahoma Transition Council. I know Amber McConnell at the OU Zarrow Center and Dr. Jim Martin, we've had those conversations before, but I do not, I wish I would have brought some and taken off the names when I left teaching, but I do not. But that's something that we can work to try to get for you guys. It's on our list. If anybody has some good ones and you want to share them, making sure you're taking off, any personal identifiable information, I would love for you to email those to me. Okay, that is all of it. That's the last question, and it is 9:59, so we're doing good on time. I just do want to remind you that there are some there's a list of assessments in the different areas, so we'll be posting this, and you'll be able to access those assessments. So those are there. There's an additional resources for assessments for individuals with significant disabilities, early and middle school, and then some additional transition resources. So I mentioned Able Tech earlier, Oklahoma Department of Human Services, DDS, lots of different, Oklahoma Developmental Disabilities Council. Yeah, Jen's here. I'm actually at the Oklahoma Developmental Disabilities Council this morning doing this webinar. So thank you, Jen, for helping me with the technology problems. So, all right.
We will be, as I had mentioned in the chat, we will be posting a recording of this webinar as well as Lori's slides on the Zarrow Center website, and there's a link in your chat. We appreciate everybody tuning in.
Absolutely.
had gotten a couple of texts from some folks that we had worked to get these created, and super excited to see that there's still 46 of you guys there on this first webinar. So
Awesome.
we look forward to hopefully bringing you guys more. We will be sending out a short survey to you guys if you guys don't mind just filling that out, and that way we can keep improving webinars and bringing topics that you guys need and want. But I think we're done. Lori,
All right. No, thank you so much. Appreciate it. Contact me if you have any additional questions. Everyone have a great day.
I think we just stop sharing.